trying to stay alive up here.
Mandela's on the phone.
More money than wisdom. But it was fun. It was great fun.
Just drinking Sprite all the way up. Make those connections in the mountains.
Tell me about it.
So it's been 30 years since Everest, and we've had quite a few episodes now reminiscing about what happened 30 years ago when the first South African team went to Mount Everest to plant our flag as mandated by Madiba, by Nelson Mandela. It was the first time the South African flag got to be at the top of Mount Everest, and it was during a very special time in our country's history. We had just gone through a period of democracy. The world opened up to us. We were able to participate in all kinds of sporting events during that time. And of course, someone had the idea that why not plant a South African flag, a new South African flag at the top of Mount Everest. So this little team went, and we have a number of people we've interviewed. So you'll now get to learn about Jan Horn, who was very, very instrumental in telling the story of how the women who finally got to Everest were selected. So today, joining me to commemorate 30 years since Everest is Jan Horn, adventurer, author, extraordinary human being. We've been on quite a number of adventures together, the two of us, and we've had great fun. And I also just wanted to say that you probably were the first person to bring reality TV to South Africa. Is that right? During your years of SABC, Jan Horn, over to you.
Yes, that was on the 5th of May, 1974. We, at that time, did the first test broadcast, 1 hour. And it was shot at the Rand Easter show. It was just people and drum majorettes and horses and all that type of thing. But the adrenaline, sitting at 1 o'clock in the studio and having to count down and press that button, I felt like I was going to launch a rocket to the moon. 4, 3, 2, 1. I was so panicky. Instead of the right thing, I said, roll camera instead of rolling videotape. But there it was, television on the screens. And I just remember thinking, there are thousands of people now standing in front of shop windows in their homes, all looking at the same picture. And I suddenly felt, gee, we're a nation. We're together.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's extraordinary that you were the first crew. You were part of the first crew that brought television to South Africa. And then you ended up having an illustrious career as filmmaker, producer. You've done everything in TV, basically, even go up a few mountains with us, haven't you?
You're telling me, yes, quite a few, yeah. There are quite a few high mountains.
Yeah. So Jan, I want us to go a little bit back to the 96 Everest expedition, which basically started in 95. There was a great announcement all over the media that a team is going to Mount Everest. Tell me, when did you first see that interest was there?
Just repeat that.
Tell me when you first saw the interest or the announcement that a team is going to climb Mount Everest.
Well, I was sitting in my office in the SABC, and this short little man with an attitude of a warthog walked into the SABC and said, we're going to climb Mount Everest. Would the SABC like to cover it for the news service? And the SABC news said, nah, South Africa don't climb mountains, we're not. And then somebody said, why don't you talk to Jan Horn? He's crazy enough to do things like that. I had a bit of a reputation for doing crazy things. So this short little man came into my office and says, we're going to climb Mount Everest. Would you like to cover it? I said, why not? Anytime. When are we leaving? He said, well, we start exercising just before Christmas on Kilimanjaro. I said, I'm in. I'll get a cameraman. Why not? And that's how I met Ian Woodall. And Ian, of course, started off by advertising in newspapers for people to come with. And eventually chose 6 very young and very attractive ladies to go with us. Ivan Ubel also was the cameraman. I was the producer. And I've never climbed a mountain before. Never. Well, I mean, not even Table Mountain. So there we are. And we went to Tanzania, we started climbing, and we climbed Kilimanjaro, and that's how
Straight
it started.
after.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that it was incredible because, as you say, even the TV people were like, no, we don't climb mountains in this country. So it was a truly
Yeah.
pioneering idea. I mean, we do have a mountain club in South Africa that has been there for quite a number of years, for decades now. But even they did hikes and, some of the peaks we have around South Africa. But the concept of climbing something as high as Kilimanjaro back then was quite a novel concept, wasn't it?
Totally. I mean, you used the right word. The Mountaineering Club mainly did hikes, not really mountain climbing. And even Kilimanjaro, for most people, it was somewhere in Africa.
Yeah.
It was, it was not done. So just climbing Kilimanjaro for all of us and for South Africa said, wow, what are these guys doing? And this is interesting, let alone Everest, which is somewhere in the north. Nobody knew where it was.
Yeah.
But that's how it started. It was so exciting.
It was exciting, it was scary, it was exhilarating, but it was also kind of far-fetched. It was such a far-fetched idea that South Africans think they can climb this mountain.
Totally. Totally far-fetched, excuse me. And I have to hand that to Ian Woodall, that he had this vision. Why don't we just climb the mountain? And why not? Let's just
Yeah.
climb the mountain. But
Yeah.
it was really not in the mind of the people. And myself, even when we went to Kilimanjaro, people said, "Are you crazy? What do you
Are
want to
you
do that
mad?
for? Yeah, you're married, you've got kids. How dangerous is the mountains?" I said, life is dangerous. Nobody gets out of life alive.
True.
I'm going to climb a mountain and I'm going to try it. Well, I didn't know what was in it for me. It was a tough one, but yeah. And then what was it? New Year's Day, we were on Kilimanjaro.
We were. We were right there on January 1996, 1st of Jan. Hey, that's extraordinary. So, Jan, before we did the whole Everest thing, there was quite a process before we got there. And the women had to be selected, of course. As you know, the men were already there, but we had to go through a selection process. And before we did anything, there was a kind of orienteering weekend in the Pilansberg. Do you remember that?
Vaguely, vaguely, no.
Yeah. So it was just a weekend of all the women coming together, and we were kind of sizing each other up, and we were trying to figure out, what's this thing all about. We were from such different backgrounds, and also quite a variety of ages. I do remember that we were asked to be between 25 and 55 in the entry form. So you had to be between 25 and 55, a South African citizen, physically fit, but that was the only criteria really. And we walked into this place as newbies, sort of having to check out each other, because after 200 women applied, only 6 of us got the invitation to go through selection. And the 6 of us went into the Pilansberg for a weekend of orientation, just to be taught and learn, and to get to know each other, and to also see what is the actual vision of the expedition. And of course, you were right there. I know it's a long time ago, 30 years, but you were right there, sort of putting all this on film for us, and helping us to see now with retrospect how we all responded to that invitation.
Well, I must say, for me, it was as new. It was as it was for you. I've never done something like this, but I mean, most of my programs I've never done before anyway. So it was
Exactly.
new. Um, Ian is a very forceful personality. You deal with Ian, and I think that is the big thing, is to let you get to know this is going to be the leader taking a crew up Everest. What kind of a man is this? Can I put my life in his hands? Can I trust him? Is he just a chancer? Can we do it? All those things ran through my mind. Um, the 6 ladies that were there, and you were one of them, as I said, all of them very attractive, varying from a horse farmer's wife and sort of a bit of a celebrity, and a person like Cathy O'Dowd was, I think, virtually the only one that had mountaineering experience. She was a rock climber, and
There
she
were
was
two
good.
of them actually. Jackie Stein was also, she was an
Uh,
orienteering facilitator, so she also knew the mountains well.
that's right. You're right. Jackie was one too. So yeah, we met all of you, and now we sort of judge, but very difficult to judge in the beginning. Um, Everybody puts their best foot forward. Everybody's smiling. Everybody's vying for that position, and as the time gets closer, there's little currents running back and forth all over, and some of the ladies come to see Ivan Oberhauser, the cameraman, and myself, and says, "What do you think? What does Ian think of me, etc., etc. And do you think I have a chance?" Well, we didn't involve ourselves in that. We kept
Yes,
out of that.
you had to
That
be
was, I
neutral.
must say, we didn't choose sides on that one. And Ian was new to me too. He's a new guy, I had to learn to get a hold of him, to get to know him. So we were very neutral on this. So
Yeah,
there weren't any favorites among us.
yeah,
There were
yeah.
some people that we enjoyed more and some the others, but there were no favorites.
Yeah, yeah. And it was also very difficult at the beginning to kind of even assess what the true capabilities are, because it's one thing for 6 women to show up and look like you're saying attractive and all smiley, but at the end of the day, you've got to be able to prove that you have what it takes to go and tackle something that no South African has ever done before. Not least the highest point in the world, right?
That's a very interesting point you raised, Sean. Um, Looking back, but even then, Cathy O'Dowd was immediately, you could see she's a mountaineer. She has the right attitude, her whole mental attitude. And then I must say that you had the same mental attitude, the attitude of you don't conquer a mountain. A mountain is, even if you finish climbing it, the mountain is still there. You go home. That mountain is not conquered. You climb a mountain, but you get to know the mountain. The mountain is bigger than you. You get to know the mountain's moods. You learn its language. And sometimes that mountain chases you away and sometimes it kills you. But you had that attitude towards the mountain. I'm not going to conquer a mountain, but I'm going to enjoy climbing the mountain and being part of that mountain. So I think that was maybe one of the reasons why Ian also chose you. I'm not sure, but it could have been, but your attitude was right.
Oh, well, thanks for reinforcing that. I mean, that's still my attitude to this day. It's not like I don't enjoy getting to the summit, but I do reinforce even when I speak to my audiences that you learn your best lessons, whether it's leadership or self-development or your own
Yeah,
empowerment, while you're on the slopes of the mountain. Because the
yeah.
summit is a bonus. There's no guarantee that anyone ever gets there. But if you don't take in the process of climbing, and that's on the slopes, then you don't really understand, from my perspective anyway, what peak performance is all about.
No, you're right. I mean, you proved yourself, Deshaun. You went led a whole team up a second time Kilimanjaro, and that was a business venture. And then you went and climbed Mount Elbrus. It's the highest mountain in Europe. So you had that attitude.
Yeah, thank you, Jana. I really
Mm.
appreciate that. I don't know if you know this, but I've been back with other groups, Kilimanjaro. I've done it 5 times now.
What? No,
Yeah,
I didn't know that 5 times
yeah.
from both sides, or
Oh, all of the different routes. I've been on almost every route on Kilimanjaro
wow.
now.
So your trucks are all over the mountain. I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
Well, that
yeah,
that proves what I'm saying. You know mountains and you can relate with a mountain.
yeah. No,
And
absolutely. And
take with Kilimanjaro, it's a bit of a slag heap, but it's a difficult mountain.
it's still
If you don't
formidable.
do the right thing, you're going to get come short.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so now if we go a little bit back and you sort of have given your idea of why 2 women were selected, then we finally got to the point of climbing. So we had to do 2 selection expeditions in 2 weeks, which, if you've
Mm.
never climbed anything in your life before and suddenly you sort of put onto 2
Mm.
high altitude climbs, that's quite a
Mm.
formidable challenge. And Ian was just like, you know what, guys, it's our one shot to prepare for Everest. We literally had, I remember, 5 months within which to get prepared. Not even, we had like 4.5 months within which
Mm.
to prepare ourselves. And it was that
Mm.
one shot at testing ourselves, proving ourselves, and then getting ourselves fit to get to the highest point in the world. So you were part of that crew. And I know that when you're having to lug about cameras, they weren't as light and small as they are today. That in itself is quite a challenge. And we went up Mount Meru. Have you got any memory of what Mount Meru was for you?
More not good memories. Mountain is a beautiful mountain, but I've never climbed a mountain before. And I was 53 years old. I was older than anybody else of you.
Yeah.
So here I am. Boy, that last bit. You guys were up there, like a bunch of monkeys. I hauled myself up that
Yeah.
mountain by my nails. And I got to the top, and thank you very much. I got a good applause from all the ladies that I made. But I
Yes.
thought, yes, Janon, are you sure you can do this? You're on the outside. I was finished.
Yeah.
Dead
Yeah.
finished going down to the camp again. I thought, no. But you recover,
Yeah.
and now
Absolutely.
Kilimanjaro lies it. Yeah.
It's amazing because Meru was the first time, I think all of us had been above 4,000 meters, maybe with the exception of Ian, and maybe Kathy. I don't think Jackie's been that high either. So it was really, for 90% of us, was the first time we'd been that high. And that was a way to first test that you can handle altitude about, because Meru is a 4,500-meter mountain.
Right.
But then literally just days later, we headed off to Kilimanjaro.
Oh, well, I made one mistake in Kilimanjaro. Well, a lot of mistakes. First, I climbed it with a pair of North Stars, plain jeans, and a warm jacket and a warm shirt. I didn't know what clothes to wear on a mountain. Mountain's a mountain.
Yeah.
Well, I froze most of the time. It was freezing. Next thing is that first day, it was raining
Yes.
and it was a mud and forest. And I made the mistake of wearing a poncho and not a proper tight fitting rain jacket. And it's a steep slope. So every time I step on top of this bloody poncho.
Oh, I remember
And,
that so
and I
well.
was and there's mud and everything. And again, I think I was the last man in at the camp. Mud spattered, miserable, wet. I hated this poncho. And I was just covered in mud. And there's no bath available. But that was the first day. It was a bit of a shock. But then I slowly got my legs and I got
Yeah.
my legs. And then the last day, it was a good day.
Yes, absolutely. That first day, I think everyone I've spoken to so far remembers how slodgy and muddy and soggy that
Yeah,
first day was.
yeah.
And do you remember the guy who tried to wash his clothes? He was one of the, I think he was a new porter, and they were trying to like initiate him. So someone allowed him to think that he can wash his clothes overnight.
I remember next. So he hung his clothes out on a tree, and the next morning they could stand up by themselves. They were frozen stiff, just a piece of ice. The poor guy.
His
But well,
clothes
to
were
go
frozen stiff.
but
um,
we had great fun.
yeah,
We
we did have
sang
fun.
we sang songs along the way.
We
We
laughed a
marched.
lot.
We had great fun.
Yes, yes, it was an incredible experience. And as you're saying, none of us knew what to wear really, because the only place you could buy any kind of outdoor hiking kit was at Cape Union Mart, which at that stage was just a military surplus kind of store. It wasn't the Cape Union Mart we know today with all of its high tech. In fact, I would think the time that we spent on the mountain coming back knowing what kind of gear is important from having bought our things overseas has helped Cape Union Mart. I stand corrected in case they see this video, but I think it's helped them to see what's the actual quality of gear that's required for mountains like Kilimanjaro, which now has millions of people go there all the time. But also for South Africans who are going to bigger mountains around the world. I think they are now very well stocked with the kind of equipment and gear necessary. But back in those days, it was all thick jackets and hiking boots.
It was mainly hiking equipment. Again, hiking boots and hiking jacket. Stop. Do you remember that we started at midnight roundabout and we climbed? I had a raging headache, feeling a bit nauseous, but I thought I'm going to do this damn mountain. And the sun came up, and I remember Cassie was in front of me. And as I got to the top, I had tunnel vision, red spots flickering all over my eyes.
Oh,
I
wow.
thought, "Hell." And Kathy came back. She says, "Jan, focus, focus." She gave me slap, slap, slap in the face,
Did
and she
she?
says, "Whoa!"
She
And it's
slapped
clear.
you alert.
And I was on top of Uhuru Peak. What an achievement!
Yeah.
I felt proud.
Yeah, yeah. I don't
Mm.
remember feeling empowered at the top. I was vaguely aware that I had made it. It's once I started to go down that I realized, oh my goodness, I just climbed Kilimanjaro.
All the ladies, I remember, just stood in one row shivering, and we wanted to take video, and video takes time, it's not photos. And everybody was shivering, and just, I thought they're going to fall over now.
Oh, I
But
was
yeah,
ready to swear at you guys because your video was so important. We had to do so many things over. We would do a
it's,
thing and you'd say, step back and do it again. And I'm like, I've got a headache. I feel nauseous. I'm cold. I don't want to have to repeat this action.
yeah.
Uh,
But that is something that I must admit has helped me. And we had a job to do. We had a camera, and we had to do filming, and you had to get your light and the action and so forth. And for you guys, it's just climbing. But we
yes,
had this whole thing of the camera, and that is a strange thing. It helps you to anchor anywhere you go. That you got a job to do, and the
yes.
camera is an anchor for you. So that
Yeah.
helped for us.
No,
Mm.
absolutely. I saw that years later when I was back on Mount Everest with the first South African group to take a South African to the top of the seven summits. We had that whole project. And it's the cameraman who finally made it to the top after the team decided. Again, bad weather, it can happen.
Mm.
But our resources were starting to diminish and we couldn't do another launch of the whole team up the mountain. And it's the cameraman who eventually took all the uh, oxygen canisters, the food, one or two
Yeah,
Sherpas, and
yeah,
it could sustain one more person up the mountain. And he was actually the one who had the ability to keep going because up
yeah,
until that moment he was the cameraman, so he had another focus.
yeah,
And suddenly it switched to, well, maybe I can go up and climb the mountain. So that was also very interesting. I
yeah.
understand completely that you would be saying that
You have a mission.
you have a
That's a
mission.
different. You have a mission, and you live in that mission. The camera is a part of your body. You think camera at night. You lie, you think of shots, etc. You don't think of danger. You don't think of cold. You think of the shots and the angles, and do I have this and that, and everything must be just right.
Yeah, so mentally you're not getting drained by the process of climbing because your mental energy
Yeah,
is in another activity. Yeah,
absolutely. No, the job is make a movie. That's what I do in America,
absolutely.
movies.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we went off, Jan, and you guys to a large degree stayed behind, but I'm pretty sure that and you've told me this, that you were following the whole thing because you had now such a vested interest in it.
Yeah, I couldn't get leave from the SABC. I was still at the SABC. I left the end of that year, and then I found my own company. So that's why, and it was miserable that I couldn't do it. But obviously, I followed every step of it. But now, you're dependent on the media feeding material here, and South Africa again wasn't too hot on it. It was still strange to them, and there were some controversies beginning to sort of creep up this way and that way. So I didn't get all of it, but I know it was an absolute monster storm that hit you guys.
Yeah,
Um, I listened to some of the recordings and so forth, and I listened to Ian at Camp 4 when the Americans asked him to go out and look for some of the strugglers. And he says, "We're just trying to stay alive up here." I
absolutely.
got
Yeah.
all that, and I eventually got all that. What I did is I asked Philip to record everything for me on audio tape at least. So I've got all the audio tapes of what's going on there, and I built a story afterwards. Program called Death on the Mountain
Yes.
from the audio tapes. You yourself did, I remember you asking is Ian on oxygen. I remember that too well. So you live with that, and you live with, and I got a feeling, a bit of a feeling of what's happening. And then, of course, the crazy triumph. When Mandela said, "No, why don't you try again?" Couldn't believe it. We did it. No, we did it.
His actual words to us were, and I was sitting in Camp 2 at the time because it was now after the storm. The team
That's
had
all.
come all the way back down to base camp, and we had this moment where we were like, now what, because the storm was so devastating. It killed quite a lot of people. And some of the teams that were in base camp were leaving because they had now experienced something that perhaps no one else had experienced on Everest before. And we were still sitting there watching people pack up their camps and leaving in their droves out base camp, emptying out. And I just remember a moment where Ian was saying, guys, we have a decision to make. And we kind of were very aware that the flag had still not made it to the summit. But we're also very aware that there's this big trauma that we need to process. So we spent a bit of time in base camp. And remember, I wasn't on the climbing permit initially, but through some sheer miracle and the grace of God, I got permission to climb beyond base camp in the middle of a season. I don't think they've ever done that before or since, where they gave a permission for me to climb the mountain while I was not on a climbing permit. And it was just an incredible intervention, I think, of God's providence. But now we were sitting there going, well, shall we try again? Shall we try make it to the summit this time? So the weather window was late in the season again. And I just remember putting on my harness and my boots and my crampons for the first time. And it was like late in the season. It was somewhere around the 20th of May or whatever it was. And for the first time, I could well, we reached the 21st on the 25th, but it was just a few days before that we left base camp. And I just remember putting on my harness for the first time to climb, not to practice climb, to actually climb, to get through the ice fall and see all the things they've described. And it was the thrill of my life to know that I'm finally on the slopes of Mount Everest. And
Wow.
And it was during that time we reached Camp 2, and we were there for literally a day. The next day, Madiba called when he realized that we're making another go of it. And it was on those big brick phones, those satellite phones, remember, because we didn't have cell phones back in the day. And Madiba's words to us was, we know that you've just been through something hectic. I'm paraphrasing. And he said, give it your best shot, but South Africa will understand if you decide to come home. And that's all we needed. I mean, he didn't say keep going. He just said you decide. And that's what made us go, you know what? That's the energy. Remember Madiba magic. That's the energy we needed to keep going.
Yeah, it was the what is this movie? Wild movie? David Boucher's
Yes.
was filming IMAX.
Yes.
Apparently, from what I remember, he called you guys. Says, guys, get on the radio. Your president wants to talk to you.
Yeah, he said Mandela's on the phone.
Mandela's on the phone. He want to talk to you. And I remember Ian after said Boucher's was absolutely stunned. So the president just phoned. He says, why don't you just climb the mountain? He says, no other president would do that, not our American president.
Absolutely.
So that's how it worked out.
Yeah, that was the special thing. It really was. It really was, because it was such an extraordinary thing for him to do. But one of the things about Madiba that I really appreciate to this day is he understood the power that sport has to unify people, to bring about change, to change people's lives. He understood it more intimately than I think most heads of state would understand the power of sport.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, look at the whole thing of the Springboks and the rugby, etc. That he backed Springboks in the rugby. They fought him, and and he had a lot of adversity there. But Madiba knew that is one non-political thing that can bring the nation together. And I think Everest did. There was a lot of controversy afterwards, mainly because of what's his name? Jan Krakauer's book, Into Thin Air, and a lot of stuff. And by the way, I've noticed that Jan Krakauer has brought out a new version in which he actually said he's now changed stuff that that was incorrect. He says, I wasn't thinking clearly. and he has now redacted some of the stuff he said. So
Yeah.
there was a lot of controversy afterwards. And we know that Bruce died. Um, I've got Ian's story on tape because the next year we went to for build a memorial for Bruce. So you also had to face that when you came back
Yeah. I've always been sad that I wasn't invited to join that team to go and
to the top.
pay our respects to Bruce. Yeah. I wasn't invited. I didn't even know people are going. I found out about it in the media. So I felt quite slighted by the idea that as a team member, I didn't get to go. But it was a traumatic time. I had a very close relationship with Bruce. And I don't think people recognize that I also needed to go through a process like that to go and, pay my respects and mourn him and so on. But yeah, it was a tough period full of controversy. Not least Ian's character, he rubbed people up the wrong way with his direct manner. But
He's
also
brilliant.
he, he was a brilliant logistician. He really understood how to get logistics done. And he understood how
He
to
is.
rally people around a big idea.
No, he was. But he had his faults too.
Yeah,
And he rubbed up
absolutely.
a lot of people the wrong way. He didn't have a very good bedside manner, if I can put it that way. But he could plan well, and he can get you to the top.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jana was saying that we actually started out as 7 climbers. We had 3 very competent rock climbers, Ed February and the 2 Andys, Andy de Klerk, also known as ADK, and Andy Hackland. And they decided at some stage during our trip that they were more capable of running the expedition than Ian. But this is because Ian had to go down to Kathmandu to sort out some of our gear that arrived late. So he had to leave the team in the capable hands of Bruce Herod, actually his deputy at that stage. And with Ian's absence, these guys decided maybe it's time to flex their muscle a little bit. And they didn't get it right because I was the deciding vote. Did you know that?
No, nothing of what you're telling me now.
So on in the entire planning, preparation, all of that before we got to Everest, those 3 guys treated Kathy and I like we didn't exist. They literally wouldn't speak to us. They were happy to do all the PR things, the smile to camera and all of that, but in our personal interactions with them, they literally acted like we know nothing. They're not going to speak to us. We persona non grata, all 3 of them. And when they did interact, it was to undermine us or to do some kind of patronizing statement or whatever. And I remember when we finally we were in Tingbushe. We had now trekked without Ian for about 2 or 3 days because he went that way to Kathmandu and we kept going up the mountain. And they decided that they can overtake the leadership of the team.
Oh.
That was Ed and the 2 Andys. And Charlotte was with them because she created a little clique with them. And eventually they thought they had the lion's share of the vote because there were 4 of them. And now Kathy, myself, and Bruce were on the other side and we were outnumbered. So they came to me, Andy de Klerk came to me and said, look, we've decided that we can continue without Ian on this expedition. Which side are you going to choose? Ian's side or our side? And it was such an easy decision for me to make because up until then, they had not treated me kindly or like another human, basically. And I said, you know what, guys, I've been on a couple of mountains with Ian. I've climbed with him. I understand how he does things. Sorry for you. I am voting Ian. So it was myself, Bruce, and Kathy who voted Ian, and the 4 of them who now didn't have. If I went to their side, we would have had a different dynamic. So it was quite ironic that the person they treated the least in the team now got to decide whether they can continue the expedition or not. And it's a little tidbit that very few people know about. That's literally the thing that happened in terms of deciding which way the team goes, you know. So they obviously came back to South Africa with all kinds of stories, but the rest of us, myself, Ian, Kathy, and Bruce, kept climbing.
I didn't know that. How did they take it when you said, no, I'm voting with Ian?
Well, they were obviously upset. They were disgusted, in fact, because they thought Kathy and I were basically just two subservient, soft targets for Ian and Bruce, and that we will eat up anything they say. So therefore, we are. They gave no credence to the fact that I'm a person with agency who can make up my own mind. They basically thought we were brainwashed by Ian. That's why we chose him.
Both of you are women. So that was an angle, feminine. Macho men came through. Did you ever get feelings about being a woman of color, that there was racism against you or this preferences or something like that?
At the time, I didn't filter my life through that. Number one, you must remember, I was on the venture of a lifetime. I was going to take every single inch of the excitement of the adventure that I could get. So my focus wasn't on whether people think I'm male, female, black, white, any of that. I know they treated me with disdain, but I didn't filter it through woman or race. I just thought, these guys. I was my own person, you know, and I come across as soft for people, and it's great because then they underestimate you. But the interesting thing was that they didn't understand the strength that I had, and I was just living in this idea of wait until you see what I can do on a mountain. I don't know where that confidence came from, but really, my filter was more, I can't believe these guys have such big egos that they think they're better than anyone else.
Did they go home then?
They did. They turned around at,
Ian came back.
before we got to base camp, they turned around because they couldn't stand Ian's leadership style. They couldn't stand that there were now two factions, which they created. They created the two factions. There were now four people. There was the doctor, the team doctor, and the three climbers. That was Charlotte, Andy Hackland, Andy de Klerk, and then Ed February. And on this side, we had Ian Woodall, Kathy O'Dowd, Bruce Herod, and myself. So we were 4 and 4. And the four of them just couldn't stand being under Ian's leadership anymore. So they left, they came home. And quite frankly, told a whole bunch of horrible stories about the four of us and got a lot of media for it too.
They did. I remember that. I've got the book here called Ascent and Descent.
Yes.
About this guy from
Ken Vernon, the Australian.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Anyway, you actually must have been glad to get rid of them.
Oh, I was relieved more than anything. I mean, it was just so nice to not have that energy with us, because I think what they didn't understand is that the expedition was not about any individual of us. It was about the flag. We were there because we were climbing to put a flag on the top of the mountain, the country's flag, the new democratic flag of South Africa. So it wasn't about personality. And I think because Kathy and I had to go through a selection process to be there, we had a greater sense of what this actually means than the guys who were just handpicked. Because if you get handpicked, you come on your ego and your competence and all of those things. Kathy and I had to prove that we belong there.
That's the difference. You were there to put the flag. They were there to put their egos on top.
I would say so.
How were they selected? How did Ian get hold of them?
My understanding is that Ian knew Ed February because they climbed as two youngsters. When they were young people, they knew each other and they climbed a couple of rock climbs together. And so he reached out to Ed, and then Ed knew Andy de Klerk because, from what I understand, Ed and Andy had done quite a number of quite extraordinary exploits in rock climbing in the US together. And Andy de Klerk knew Hackland as a young climber as well. And I think Hackland had been to Aconcagua by that stage. So they were not really even by invitation. They were kind of just, hey, guys, we know what we're doing. Ian is going to Everest. Let's do it. So I think they didn't have that sense that they have to prove that they belong on the team. And Kathy and I were always aware that we had to prove that we belong on the team.
That must have been tough. Yeah, it was the controversy. I had to fend it off a lot of friends, also the SABC outfits and so on. And I just said, listen, Ian Woodall is not the nicest guy that I know of, but I would climb with Ian Woodall.
Yeah.
I said I trusted Ian because I saw how he planned things. I saw how he planned every aspect to the finest little details. And even things go wrong, Ian can still fix things and still keep going. So I defended Ian. Cassie and I became very good friends. But yeah, you lose some friends, you get a lot of anger around you. It wasn't very nice.
Yeah. Well, the thing I've learned from having climbed all the other peaks is that with high risk, high reward exploits, you will make some friends and you lose some friends. And your real character gets tested in the mountains, as you know. So there's nowhere to hide when you're cold, suffering, hungry, with blisters in your feet, and you've got an annoying team member. There's nowhere to hide. Your real character comes out. So I think it's just that. I think the mountains have such a wonderful way of democratizing people's experience
Yeah,
and creating equality. I think
yeah,
mountains create equality,
yeah.
true equality.
One thing you might help me about, there was a story about our radio working up to Camp 4, or the Americans wanted to use our radio. I can't remember exactly what happened, and people ask me about that. I don't know the details there, just know
Yeah.
something of what's going on.
So
Can
what
you
actually
remember?
happened, yes, what actually happened is we used Motorola two-way radios, and we had a channel that was very, very clear up at Camp 4 and even to the summit. And when the storm started to come up, it interfered with the channels the other teams were using. And
Yeah.
as a result, we could communicate clearly with our team in Camp 4, but the other teams didn't have any communication. So we actually sent Philip Woodall, Ian's brother, who happened to be our base camp manager. We sent him over to be in the New Zealand camp with their base camp manager, Helen. And if you watch the movie, you'll see Helen speak to Rob. That was
Mm,
actually the South African radio
radio.
in Helen's hand that was
Mm,
connecting with Rob because we had the
mm,
clearest signal. And so that's the way that if you watch the movie Everest, which came out in 2015, there is that snippet in the movie where Rob is talking to his base camp manager. It's actually the South African radio channel and phone, I mean two-way radio, that
yeah.
allowed for that moment to happen. And I was sitting with it in my hand. I was sitting with our South African radio on my side, and Philip was sitting in the New Zealand camp, and we were patching through our base
Mm,
camp. It was quite an extraordinary coincidence that we had the ability to do it, but I could hear every word that Rob was saying to his wife in his final phone
mm.
call to her.
No, thanks for that. I've often wondered about that. Now I got the full story on that on the radio. People ask me because I do talks on Everest, not only this one, but also the 1998 uh, Tibetan one,
Yes,
when Frankie died. I was on that one.
yes.
And I often, I need to get the facts straight. And I've got video of that, of those times. I've got video of Ian virtually being blown out of the tent. So it's good that I know that story.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah. Yeah, and so I mean, after Madiba's call and the rest of the team could push on because they'd at least acclimatized up to Camp 4. At that stage, it was end of the season and I went as far as I could go with my acclimatization program. And then I had returned back to base camp and the rest of the team went and got the flag to the summit. So that was quite an incredible, um,
good feat.
thing
Mm,
to just kind of get to the moment of, oh my goodness, the flag finally
they've
made it
made
to
it.
the summit.
They've
And by the
yeah.
time Ian and Kathy dialed into our radio to say that they had made it, I was in base camp already by then.
And then Ian stayed behind on Camp 4 waiting for Bruce for
Yes,
quite
yes,
some
they
time.
did. Yes, they
Mm.
did actually. And people don't realize that's a little bit of detail that people conveniently forget. I remember the criticism that both Ian and Kathy had when Bruce decided to go on by himself. Number one, Bruce had a Sherpa with him at the time. Kathy and Ian came back down from the summit and they encountered Bruce coming up towards the summit. And so they had a little encounter. At that stage, Bruce still had his Sherpa with him. And so it was in the death zone, I suppose, an easy decision to make, given that decisions are at the same level as a 5 to 7 year old, mentally. So I think Ian enjoyed the idea of giving autonomy and agency to the team. And he said to Bruce, if you feel like you want to keep going, because he knew that Bruce was very adamant and desperate to get to the summit. So they waved goodbye and Bruce kept climbing. But at some stage, Bruce told his Sherpa to turn around as well. The Sherpa didn't want to continue. And Bruce said, well, in that case, leave me alone. I'll summit by myself.
Yeah, that was Ian. He would say to Bruce, I mean, in a death zone, it's not a place you start a fight, an argument.
Yeah.
And it's not where you pull rank and says, I tell you, you go down now, I'm boss.
You don't want to fight at that altitude.
Although you're a team on a mountain, you also climb by yourself. So you make a decision and you stick by that decision and you live by your decision. And Ian, I think, valued that he says, well, if that's your decision, I respect that. We've been to the top. I understand why I do it. I disagree, but I understand. And yeah, let's hand that to Ian. And it's sad that Bruce didn't make it. It is quite sad.
Yeah, it really is quite sad to this day. And I think there is still the unmentioned thing of Ian was not responsible for Bruce's death. Bruce's decision to carry on and climb the mountain on his own and took as long as it took. He didn't take into account the turnaround time. He just kept climbing. And that's actually the thing that finally got him to sit down exhausted and freeze to death because he couldn't get up again.
It happens.
Yeah,
it just happens.
It does. And sad as it is, it can happen. So Jan, beyond Everest, you and I have also done a base camp trek with a bunch of rich guys from the UK and Australia. Do you remember?
Oh, the crazy guys do more money than wisdom. But it was fun. It was great fun.
It was great fun.
Who was the Olympia guy? I remember getting to Kalapatar, and Daley was just slightly ahead of me. And he sat down, and I knew Kalapatar. He just take it slowly. And as I passed him, he says, okay, old man, you're a better climber. Keep going. I'm not going to make it. Man, that was quite something.
Gave me so much to think about because number one, he doesn't drink water. People don't know this about him, but he doesn't drink water. So he was just drinking Sprite all the way up, which didn't help him to acclimatize.
Yes.
And I don't know if you would remember, there was eventually a moment where I said to him, right, you're not going anywhere until you finish this 1.5 liters of water. We were sitting in Ferrashe and I just had enough with this guy who just drinks Sprite. He's an Olympic legend, for goodness sake, who doesn't drink water. I couldn't figure it out. And so he drank a little bit. He drank enough for me to feel satisfied that he can keep going. That's why he struggled on Kalapatar, because he didn't hydrate well enough with the right stuff to keep him going. Yeah.
But it was a fun climb. That one, I really enjoyed that base camp walk.
Yeah, it was incredible. So Jan, you and I have done Mount Meru, Kilimanjaro, Everest Base Camp, and then Mount Elbrus in Russia together. It's amazing. You can sometimes make those connections in the mountains with people, and then they just stay friends forever. There are people you never want to see again after an expedition.
Tell me about it.
And then there are people who just stay in your heart. And I think Natasha is one of them. I also stayed in contact for a long time with Marta Maria. and she, yeah, so we lost contact on Facebook, but it was just amazing to know that we've got these amazing climbers, Russian friends, also do all these extraordinary things.
And
Yeah.
then your water bag froze up or lost the water on Elbrus? I
Oh,
forgot
I
what.
remember that. You made such a strategic decision on the day that I did the stupidest rookie thing. I still can't believe I actually did that. I went up with a camelback, but of course the pipe was so thin that the water inside the pipe got frozen and I couldn't drink anything. And I was so dehydrated. And eventually you decided that I can have your bottle of water. And that's what made me get to the top, Jan. I don't know if you remember that.
Absolutely. Well, that was the reason why we went to Elbrus. I was a cameraman, but the point is for you to get to the top.
Yeah.
Again, this is a strange thing being a cameraman. Yeah, I want to get to the top, but I want to make a better movie. So,
Yes.
my mission is movie making, not so much to get to the top.
Yeah.
So, although it was difficult for me, I wanted to get to the top, and I was so close. It was still the right thing. I felt that's the right thing to do. You
Yeah.
should get to the top.
And I
Do
did.
it.
And I did. And
And
I thank you to this day.
we had such fun. I kept a diary of that trip.
Oh,
Um,
great. You must
also,
share some of it with me.
it's a small little book. I should actually take copies of it. Great
Yeah.
fun, in India, especially in India afterwards.
Yes.
Uh, not India, Nepal.
In Nepal. Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.